October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, you beautiful people. I'm back again, this time with some news and reviews. The content's going to be coming out because we're going to be doing some bits on the alternative corner as well. I wanted to do this yesterday, but I just got carried away doing other bits. So we're slightly running a little bit behind on this. Earlier on in the week, as you know, and obviously today's topic is BOXXER and Riyadh season, or aka Turki Alalshikh, aka His Excellency. This is what we're going to be covering today. That new sponsorship, I'd probably going to word it as. So as you know, BOXXER had their first BBC presser on Thursday for Fraser Clark versus Jamie TKV. I did say I was invited, but unfortunately I wasn't able to fit the time into my schedule to go. But fortunately for me, the target, the person I wanted to speak to, Ben Shalom, wasn't there anyway, because he'd posted in his Instagram stories that he was in Saudi. So I thought, he's not going to be getting back to the UK within 24 hours for this press conference. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's a good thing I can't go. Everything for a reason. Anyway, the press conference happens, there's a few people there, the main fighter's there, not any undercards, considering it's coming up quite soon, whatever. So that happens, you know, BBC breaks through with BOXXER, but then it looks like, I'm thinking, why is Ben Shalom in Saudi? What is going on? Obviously it's important because he's not attended his first press conference with the BBC. So he should have asked to be, you know, excused from that, apologise for that, because he should have been there, let's face it. So something more important must have come up, and then, like I said, he's in Saudi, what's he doing there? And then we get the announcement, don't we? We get the picture, the full announcement comes in. I'm going to get onto Instagram so I can read out the full kind of like post that was put across social media. Should be on the BOXXER channel as well. That one comes up first in the search engine. Oh, that's weird. It's not on there. Let's try Ben Shalom's account. Let's have a quick look there. Ben Shalom. Right, here we go. So it's a collaborative post with Ring Magazine. It's from Ring Magazine and Ben's collabed on it. A game-changing deal for British boxing. Riyadh season has agreed to a major sponsorship with BOXXER to support the new era of UK fight nights, delivering big events and homegrown stars to millions of viewers on the BBC. Okay, so you've got keywords in there. I'm going to go into detail with this because you know what I'm like. I'm like a surgeon. I like to pick things apart. Major sponsorship. So that's Riyadh season, pumping a lot of money. Major sponsorship means major money with BOXXER to support the new era of UK fight nights. Bearing in mind, UK fight nights. Don't get me wrong, this is potentially, it could be global later on, but right now, new era of UK fight nights, delivering big events and homegrown stars to millions of viewers on the BBC. So that is what comes from the advert. The usual support comes in. So I think this kind of stems from, oh yeah, he's only got four air times a year, and that's not going to look very good with the amount of fighters that he's got. And, you know, there were a few sniggers about it and etc, etc. And like I've always said, love Ben Shalom, dislike Ben Shalom. He's a hustler and he will find a way. He loses a major deal with Sky. He then goes on to get an interim injunction against one of the former staff members that he alleges was colluding behind his back and sabotaging against him. He gets the order, he gets the injunction. While that's going on, he lands the deal with the British broadcasting channel BBC, a key channel that everyone knows about because it's not free, is it? Because we pay TV license. So if you like, you can say that's a subscription also. I think it's about 14 quid a month to pay out my direct debit for the BBC, even though I'd never watch it, but whatever. So he lands a deal with them. They're potentially saying, oh, it's going to be less of a budget. He's only having a certain amount of fights every year, etc. But he still gets the deal. He announces his first fight card, which is a couple of weeks away. He announces that he's also kept Adam Azim. So he's juggling all these plates. Then he nips off to Saudi just before his birthday. So happy belated birthday. I think it was October the 2nd. It was Ben's birthday. Don't know how old he is now. He's probably 30 or something. I don't know. He's quite young, isn't he? And goes over and manages to land a sponsorship deal with His Excellency. So don't underestimate Ben Shalom's hustle. But anyway, we're going to get into it. So we're going to break down what could be the most powerful new alliance in boxing. And I'm going to say that because the ring has announced it as a major sponsorship. So you've got BOXXER. BBC deal is now backed by Saudi Arabia's Riyadh season and is overseen by His Excellency Turki Alalshikh. On paper, it's money meets mainstream TV, but behind the headlines, this partnership could reshape how fights are made, how shows are funded, and who really controls the narrative in UK boxing. Okay? So BOXXER's BBC deal with BBC obviously is a multi-fight deal, multi-year agreement. That's what he said when he went on TalkSport. And it brings live professional boxing back to the BBC Two and iPlayer. BBC Two is where you're going to see Fraser Clark and Jamie Takivi go at it for the British belt in a couple of weeks' time. The BBC are the broadcaster, but the real financial muscle is now coming in from Riyadh season. I don't know if you guys, if you're new here, go back and listen to what I said before. I said that because potentially less funding, BOXXER are going to need to find a huge investor that will back them so they can pay the fighters, etc., the money that the fighters are worth, or the money that they've set this bar that they've been paying fighters initially. I said that earlier, and now obviously this has happened. So like I said, the BBC handles the broadcast, but the real financial muscle comes from Riyadh season. The Saudi events powerhouse led by Turki Alalshikh, the man behind Fury and Ngannou, Day of Reckoning, Knockout Chaos, and all the other wonderful stuff that we've had on our screens that have spoilt us in a way, I guess. But to make it clear, Riyadh season isn't buying BBC airtime, it's sponsoring BOXXER directly. So even though they're all going to be collaboratively working together, the money is for BOXXER. It's not like Riyadh season are investing in BBC as such, it's going to BOXXER. So that means the Saudi brand pays for production, marketing, fighter costs, which is like what I said, while BOXXER supplies the talent and the BBC supplies the platform. So a nice little trilogy, how can you put it? A tri-working business enterprise together there with all three of them. It could work quite well. I think that can open up the door for BOXXER signing new fighters, potentially some fighters that contracts are due to expire elsewhere. And I'm going to go on to stuff like that shortly, and you'll understand why I'm saying all of this stuff. So yeah, interesting. Why it matters then? And I think this isn't just another sponsor logo. Riyadh season has already poured hundreds of millions into boxing over the past 2 years, transforming Saudi Arabia into a global fight capital. Everyone knows it now. He's brought the highlight over there, hasn't he? And now that money is touching British, and I'm not going to call it free to air because you pay a TV license for it, but it's going on to the BBC for the first time. So the partnership kicks off with their first fight, which is October the 25th in Derby. Fraser Clark versus Jamie Takivi, headlining the first BBC Two fight night under its new structure. If it works, and it's, you know, we haven't even started the early days yet, BOXXER could finally deliver what UK fans have been asking for. Now, this is where you guys can debate in the comments. High quality, accessible cards without pay-per-view pricing. No, it's not pay-per-view, but like I said, TV license isn't free. So we look at upsides, you know me. Upsides, cons, pros, cons, I'm going to do it. Bigger budgets, okay, could equal better matchmaking. So if Riyadh's funding has already united rival promoters, when you think about Matchroom v Queensberry, the 5v5, imagine that same firepower applied to BOXXER's UK shows. So we could expect better undercards and maybe even cross-promotional bouts on the BBC, unless the fighters from other platforms are contracted into fighting on DAZN only. Prime example, the Jake Paul versus AJ fight. Whether you're interested in it or not, what could be a problem is that AJ signed exclusively to DAZN, so he won't be able to jump over onto Netflix. But we know that Jake Paul has boxed on Netflix, so he's not necessarily signed to a broadcaster, as in Most Valuable Promotions. So if the fighters are with a promotional company that's funded by Riyadh Season, and they are not tied in to a broadcaster, we could expect cross-promo shows. Don't get me wrong, we're doing that now. We've got Conor Ben, Chris Eubank Jr. However, there's more of a structure to it. So before, you could say that potentially BOXXER fighters weren't necessarily getting involved, like the 5v5 had nothing to do with them, did it? But now, because it's all coming from the same money pot, you could get all the fighters actually fighting each other, but on a bigger scale. And I'm going to speak about that in detail in a little bit. So you get the mainstream exposure, BBC primetime plus Saudi spectacle means fight nights could trend on iPlayer, social media, reaching a casual audience again, something boxing desperately needs. There's definitely ways around marketing for boxing. Yes, the casual audience is one of them, but I think that the promoters should kick their fighters up the bum and say, get on socials, do something different, not telling you to act out like what you're not, but let the people get behind you. I keep saying the same thing. If the fans of boxing were like the fans of football, it would be it would be a greater audience, and they'd back you to the end as well. There'd always be a fan of yours, the individual fighter. I think the fighters really need to sort their social media out. Don't do something different, just be themselves. They will find their audience will find them. Everybody's got something in common with someone. Some might not like it, but that's how you build your individual fan base. It's just like the group that we've got here with our subscribers. Some subscribers to other boxing channels will not like the way I do stuff. Absolutely, probably hate it. And that's why you never see them here. But the ones that I have got here, they like the style, they like the format, they like what we do. And that's why we grow a solid, I'd say more like a boxing community, boxing family, because I see the same people coming up in the comments when I'm on my lives, and we're building a real massive solid community. And that's not because October Red is trying to be like anybody else. October Red, me, I'm just myself, and you either like it or you don't, but it builds a solid base. And I think that's what the fighters should do. I think, and I'm digressing a little bit here, the fighters get with a platform and they think that the promoter, because he's the promoter, is going to do everything for them. He's there to promote the fights. You as a fighter should be promoting yourself. You're a business at the end of the day. You're classed as self-employed. You have to show the audience why they should back you. It's not always, especially these days. I know you guys are saying, oh, it's down to the boxing skill. Get my words out. I get so passionate about this. It's not all about skill. People buy into personalities. They buy into who people are. So I think the fighters, I don't know if any fighters are listening to this, but if they are, we want to see more of you. What do you like? What's your personality? What do you do when you're not training in the gym? You know, I'm not saying I want to see what colour underwear you're wearing. We don't need that much of a depth, unless, you know, that's your thing. But we want to get to know you. And I think if they build on that, instead of being so secretive, so private, oh, I just want to box and go home and earn, you're not going to get chosen to fight unless you are elite. When you're elite, it doesn't matter about anything else. But if you're not elite, you're kind of like, you're good, but you're not elite. You're not going to get picked because people are going for personalities over skill. Just like in the social media world, they go for numbers, quantity over quality. Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in. So, like I said, the mainstream exposure, you know, I know that they will, when it comes to Riyadh season, they will flood the market with advertising. They will push you into, how can I say, consuming their content over everybody else's. We've seen it. So it is a powerhouse, and because they've got the money, they can do that. So when you think about financial stability, instead of surviving from event to event, relying on potential ticket sales, I mean, some of these fighters, listen, I've heard that they can't even sell a ticket. And how do they expect a business to survive if they can't even sell a ticket? You've got some fighters that can sell thousands. You've got some fighters that can sell 1,000. You've got some fighters that can sell 500, 100, and you've got some fighters that can probably sell 10. They need to work on building that audience so they can create revenue as well. But while that's going on, while the fighters are building their profiles, because we're talking about some potentially new fighters, some younger fighters that are building themselves, they won't need to worry about, say, and this is BOXXER, worry about the financial side, because they can plan their fights, because they know now they've got a stable budget to work with to plan events ahead, you know? And you think about people like Adam Azim, Caroline Dubois, Callum Simpson, you know, to name the names that, you know, Lauren Price, to name the names that BOXXER have got that can really work on building those fighters. I've got a shout out to, actually, to be fair, to Fraser Clark and Lauren Price. They're continuously putting stuff up on social media about what they're doing, other stuff that they're getting involved in. They're still posting. Just because nothing's was happening with their promoter for quite a while, they didn't like go dormant. They kept on posting because it makes them relevant. If I'm seeing their content in my feed, I'm like, okay, they're still there. If I don't see you, you're just out of sight, out of mind. You don't exist. You really need to invest in yourself. But I think with the Riyadh season, with the financial investment, that will help. However, there's always a downside to it, isn't there? BBC impartiality, and I know that there's been some controversial headlines around, obviously, Saudi Riyadh season, why they're getting involved in the sport, etc., etc. We've seen that out there. We've seen that people have published articles and have been blocked from events. We know all of that's there. So we have to look at that as well. The BBC, publicly funded and fiercely protective of its impartiality. You know, the BBC, or I don't know, the network or the viewers might think, well, why are they getting involved? Why is Riyadh season getting involved? You know, Riyadh season already controls the global fight calendar. We're seeing that. We're seeing the logo come up everywhere. Practically all fights now, all major promoters, the Riyadh season badge is there. Big UK shows could be rescheduled to fit Saudi mega cards. So you're looking at, there won't be potential clashes, but rescheduling of fights. Good for exposure, but risky if domestic storylines get delayed. In other words, you know, they could be put on the back burner because they're not deemed as that important because we've got like the Saudi major, the mega cards, one for a better word. So we're looking at centralization of power as well. We know that His Excellency Turki Alalshikh, he wants a unified league-style boxing model. It produces, obviously, epic nights, but it centralises decision-making. If it prioritised shifts, UK promoters, even with BBC airtime, could find themselves orbiting around, obviously, Riyadh's timetable because they're putting in the money, you know. But we look at the track record. We've had 2023, 2024, 2025 of Riyadh season. So it kicked off with October 2023, Fury versus Ngannou. And that was the first one for Riyadh season in boxing. That was the major push. Then by December, Day of Reckoning, where Hearn and Warren were together, you know, under one roof, something that we never thought we'd see. Absolutely insane. I remember it like I was in awe. I was actually at the press conference just staring at both of them and I just thought, wow, I never thought I'd see this. March 2024, we had Knockout Chaos, which was AJ versus Ngannou. And then June 2024, we can't forget the 5v5, Matchroom versus Queensberry, financed and created in Riyadh. So in less than 2 years, Riyadh season has gone from hosting one fight to effectively bankrolling both major UK promoters, and BOXXER now becomes the third UK brand connected to and what we can call that eco boxing system, I guess. But uniquely, it brings in the BBC with it because, as you know, the broadcasters are going to be part of it. You know, they're not just going to be, BOXXER aren't going to be there on their own, even though it's financed separately. BBC become part of it because they are the broadcaster. So these are my potential thoughts on how it could go. The upswing, BBC plus Riyadh, mass exposure, high production, fighters finally reaching mainstream TV again, which is always a good thing. We needed that. And the result of that, because BOXXER could cement itself as the UK's #1 platform for homegrown talent. And I say that lightly, only because BOXXER is focusing UK. You've got Matchroom. They are global. They are all over the place. I think it's getting to the point now they're having one fight night. They're having the same fight nights, but in different countries. It's happening, I think, next week. We've got Alan Makhmudov, and then there's a fight in the US as well. So I think it's, you know, when it comes to Matchroom, they are global. Potentially, well, it depends on who they sign, who they keep, who they get. I wouldn't say it's #1, but I say that it definitely brings them into contention when it comes to competition. So one of the other things is potential overshadowing. If Riyadh focuses on global supercards, which is, you know, what we've seen happening, UK shows risk becoming supporting acts. You know, the backup dancers. BOXXER gains short-term prestige, but long-term independence. It could shrink. Either way, the power balance in boxing has officially shifted yet again. And the Saudis just don't host fights anymore. They literally are running the boxing calendar. So then when we think about it, the question is, will the BBC era under BOXXER and Riyadh bring boxing back to the people? This is the test. This is what we're yet to find out. Or just make Britain another stage in Saudi's boxing global showcase. You know, we've seen that. I think Ant Corolla did a fantastic interview with Catterall the other day. Adam Catterall. And he was so right, talking about, yeah, it's great. You know, they're putting on some really good shows, but we feel like the UK is suffering. And when he's talking about the UK, he's talking about the UK mainstream shows, But what I will say to counteract that, the small haul scene is thriving, and the small haul scene is growing, and it's becoming more and more like, say, for example, the initial Matchroom shows, the initial Queensberry shows. If you take the branding off now, could you really tell the difference with the UK shows, is what I'm getting at. So the small hall promoters, I mean, say for the main promoters, yeah, they are struggling because they're pulling the main fighters and putting them on Riyadh cards, ring cards, not say, for example, Matchroom or Queensberry cards. But when you look at the smaller hall shows, they're thriving. They're being broadcast, say, by seconds out, Talk Sport. There's fights on more often. They're going to be obviously getting more money in. The fighters have to sell tickets, so they know how to hustle and promote themselves. I think there's going to be a rise. Well, there is a rise with the small hall market. And that's where you kind of have this 3 level of boxing, or 3 tier of boxing kind of becoming 2, because the small hall shows are catching up. And I wouldn't even call them small hall shows, because now that almost sounds disrespectful when you see the production and what's going into them. So we will see. I want to know what you guys think, as per usual. You guys are the eyes and the ears. You may have even seen stuff that I haven't. There's always controversy in sport. That's why we like it. I do like, the fights that we've had under Riyadh season. I do think that they've listened to the feedback, because remember when they used to have the music shows and we was doing our watch-alongs and it was like, please just stop, just stick to boxing. That stopped and they stuck to boxing. What sometimes, and this is me just looking at it from maybe a business perspective, is kind of like what Ant says, where they're taking all the major fights, and then which could be, each fight on the card could be a headline itself. And then it's like these fight cards that we have in the UK, they're not bringing that much fire, because the main fighters, the key fighters, have been taken off to do other shows. That's the only thing. Are we going to find, a happy medium somewhere? And also, is His Excellency Turki Alalshikh going to continue to invest in Matchroom and Queensberry? Have they got a life expectancy? When are their contracts? Or is there a contract? When does it run out? Can he just pull the plug all of a sudden? How does this work? Because now he's brought in BOXXER. Is this going to be his new favourite toy? Is the one that he wants to have the most fun with? And then the other two get neglected? How's it going to work? And I think one thing I've learned from this, and I will say this personally, is anytime you get investment, anytime you get any money, make sure you're putting stuff away for a rainy day, because you never know when you're going to need it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our news and reviews on this autumn windy Saturday morning. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'll be back soon, probably with some alternative corner stuff. I've put up a schedule so you guys can see what I'm up to for the next few weeks. And yeah, as we say at October Red, stay ready.
October Red is sponsored by SA Security. Maximum security, minimum fuss.